Chris Swick here, your host. I got John Maksym, a recording artist from Kitchener, Ontario, with me today. I'm glad he can be with me. I've been a friend of him for over 20 years. So take it away, John, and let us know a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Chris. Well, like you said, my name is John Maksym. I'm a recording artist. I've been playing for over 23 years. Started writing songs when I was probably about 13 years old in grade 8. And I've been doing so ever since. I'm 36, and I'm onto my first solo venture. I've been playing in rock bands my whole life and wrapped up my last project in December and started off as a solo artist in January 2020.
Nice. You want to let everyone know about that project that you wrapped up? Who is the band?
The band was called Breaching Vista. We were together for 13 years. We put out a full-length album, an EP, a number of singles, and just had a really good time. Played over 200 shows, opened for a handful of great Canadian bands over the years, and played lots of cool venues. And it was a good time. It was just time to move on in different directions. We all had other projects that we were starting up, and just we're still all good friends and everything. It was one of those times in life where you just kind of go on with something else.
So how was that breaking up with the band? Like, how did that talk go?
It actually went fairly simply. We were all on the same page. So, um, if I remember correctly, like things were kind of winding in that direction anyway. And we got to a point where my bass player, Mike, and good friend, called me up and said, "Hey man, let's grab a coffee and talk about the future of the band." And I said, "Yeah, that's a good idea." Because at that point in time, I'd been writing a handful of songs that didn't feel like they were going to be Breaching Vista songs. And I was already exploring some options of like, okay, well, what can I do? I guess I could record them, release them under my own name and just start a side project as a solo artist and just kind of build up my brand as a songwriter outside of the band. And we got together at Starbucks and we sat down and had a coffee. I was showing him some stuff that I was working on. And he just kind of said to me, man, I think I'm ready to move on from the band. Like, you're welcome to continue on, to use the name, keep building it up. But he just didn't have it in him to kind of keep going with it. And he was starting to play like session play for other country artists. And there's a punk rock band that he was joining called the Crease Rule, based out of Toronto. And he was getting heavily involved in that. And I could tell that, his heart just wasn't in it anymore. But the thing was, I was kind of feeling the same way. My heart really wasn't, into Breaching Vista at that point in time anymore either. So it was it was a mutual agreement between the two of us.
Yeah.
And then, so I said to him, I was like, well, I'm not really interested in carrying on the name, the band, the brand right now. Maybe it's something we'll revisit at a later date. It's never off the table, but for the foreseeable future right now, I wanted to kind of go and do my own thing anyway. And so then I called up our guitar player, Al, and had the same conversation with him over the phone. And he was really relieved because he said to me that, I'm really glad you guys are thinking that way, because I was kind of feeling that myself. He's like, I've kind of, I've been really busy with some other things going on in life. And I
Yeah.
just don't, he said he just couldn't commit to it anymore. And I said, that's fine, man, because, we're all we've grown up together and we're all still great friends. But it was just time to kind of move in different directions. And our drummer at the time, Michael, he had actually just let us know that he was going to leave the band to pursue his career as a pilot. He got offered a job out in Calgary for WestJet and was going to take that job on. And it was a great career move for him. We were very supportive of him. And so that kind of brought forth that conversation, I guess, with the rest of us was, like, are we going to sit there and audition for another new drummer, and how much work do we want to put into it? How much energy do we have left, in the tank? And it made sense to kind of wrap it up and say, you know what, we've had a good run. Let's throw a wicked farewell show, and we'll do it at the end of the year, right before Michael leaves. And that'll be the way we go out, with a bang. And that's what we
Nice.
did.
Yeah. It was like a bittersweet then.
Yeah, it was bittersweet, but I still talk to those guys, on like a weekly basis. We have a group chat
Nice.
on our phones that we just, keep in touch with, see what everybody's up to. Mike has helped me work on a couple of my new songs. I'll probably get Al playing guitar on a song or two, in the near future, because the guy's just such an amazing guitar player.
Yeah.
And Michael, if he's back in town at some point in time, sitting behind his drum kit, we'll probably work on something, as well. But right now, I know he was establishing himself out in Calgary, and he was loving his job. He was sending us pictures, showing us what he's seeing from his view and stuff. It's pretty amazing up there.
Nice. Yeah, for sure. So what was it? What was your childhood like growing up in Kitchener?
My childhood was great.
Yeah.
I always played sports growing up. And when I was a kid, I thought I was going to be a Toronto Blue Jay. I was a big baseball player, big baseball fan.
Who was your favorite
Um,
player back then?
Back then, Roberto Alomar, without a doubt.
Nice, nice.
But as I grew up and got older, I started to really appreciate Joe Carter and his contributions to the Jays history. So between the two of those guys, I mean, you can't go wrong with either pick.
Yeah, for sure. How would you say your relationship was with your family, like your parents, your siblings?
I've got one sibling, my sister Natalie, and her and I get along extremely well. We're often like a duo brother sister kind of thing. We go out to different events like concerts or music conferences together and such. She's very involved in the music world as well. She's a freelance like crew member, basically.
Nice.
She can handle a lot of different responsibilities. Has done some touring, has worked for festivals, has worked for large events, has worked for big bands. Like, she's done it all. She gets hired even for what is it? I can't even think of it now.
That's
We'll
all
have to
good.
edit that out. No,
That's all good.
she gets hired for styling. That's it.
Oh, nice.
Personal styling for bands. She's worked with the Washboard Union and Nice Horse, awesome country band. A lot of country stuff she's done, actually.
Yeah, yeah. I saw that
Sorry
she
about that
guys.
brain fart there.
Yeah, it's all good. We all get them. So, what was it that got you into music originally?
What got me into music? I answered this question on Instagram not too long ago, and I don't really know exactly what got me into music, what inspired me. I picked up a guitar around 11 years old. My dad had one under the bed, wasn't using it. We saw some advertisements for guitar lessons. I said I wanted to be a drummer. We didn't have drums, so I tried
Next
it
best
out.
thing's guitar.
Yeah, I didn't even know really what I was getting myself into. I remember walking into my first lesson, and it was a group lesson, and the guitar instructor, showing us like, hey, this is what you guys will learn by the end of these, 12 weeks or whatever the course was. We'll show you, teach you how to play the guitar, how to play some chords. You'll understand how the guitar works, basically. And he started playing When I Come Around by Green Day, which
Nice.
was my favorite band. So when I heard him playing When I Come Around, it just kind of blew me away. And this is like, I'm at 11 years old right now. I don't know anything about guitar and instruments and that. But I'm listening to him play this Green Day song, and I thought, that's incredible that he can make it sound like that. And it got me hooked, and I was like, oh, now I really want to do this. I want to learn that. And that was actually the very first song that I learned on guitar.
Oh,
But
wow.
when I look back at the history of, my childhood and growing up, it actually goes back further than that. And I mentioned to you that I was really into sports, and I thought I was going to be a Blue Jay. Well, before I was into sports, music really was a big inspiring part of my life. And it took me some reflecting to look back and realize that um, before Green Day and before guitar lessons, I listened to a lot of like the 90s pop and rap. So I was into Michael Jackson. I was into MC Hammer. Before that, I was into the New Kids on the Block, the boy
Nice.
band
I
that,
actually had that cassette tape too.
yeah, the boy band that launched it all. But it was more the entertainment value. Like, the music was great. I loved the music, and I would sing along to all the songs and stuff. But the entertainment value, that all of these guys could sing, they could dance, they could perform. They really put on a show. And then before that, the very first bit of music I was introduced to when I was about 3 years old was Bruce Springsteen. And my
God
dad would
bless
put
him. My
on,
dad loved him too.
oh man, the boss, right? So my
Yeah.
dad would put on his Born in the USA record, and I would jump on the couch in the living room, and I would just be dancing around, singing along to every word. And there's pictures of me at that age where I've got a toy red guitar and I'm wearing a red cape and I'm wearing a black mask. And, I'm just like ready to rock out. And
Nice.
even prior to that, there's a photo of me as like an infant wearing a little ninja costume and just holding a microphone, whatever. Great visual.
Think thinking of like trying to be like Kiss.
You know what? It was one of those things where I didn't realize the seeds were planted that early in my life until later on.
Yeah.
But it was that entertainment value. So where it started off with Springsteen, that was my real introduction to music, um, and then it went through these various stages of entertainers, from the New Kids on the Block to MC Hammer to Michael Jackson, and then it came to Green Day. And Green Day was my favorite band at the time that I started actually learning how to play music. Then I looked at the two and I'm like, well, Bruce Springsteen and Billy Joe Armstrong are basically the two frontmen that kind of make up my DNA as a musician, as a frontman, as a songwriter. It's
Nice.
a blend of those two guys, and that's what brought me into doing this. And the style that I've kind of created for myself is heavily influenced by both of those guys.
Nice.
Uh, so I look back at that being Springsteen would be my early inspiration, the very start of it, and then Green Day kind of helped me put things together and take off as a musician.
And then and then Dookie's your all-time favorite album now, eh?
Dookie's up there, man. I don't know. I
Yeah.
have a hard time picking an all-time favorite album, but I'll tell you, Green Day Dookie was my first CD that I ever owned, and
Nice. I remember getting that in Columbia House.
yeah, I ordered a ton of records from those guys.
I
Um,
don't think I was supposed to, but I did.
well, that was the thing, right? 10 CDs for a penny, and then pay an arm and a leg for the rest of them.
Yeah.
But no, you know what? It was that very first intro to Basket Case that
Nice.
got me. I remember being in grade 6, and this kid Paul that was in class with me would sing this silly little song, you know, saying, "Do you have the time to listen to me whine?" And he just like, but he didn't sing it as the Green Day melody. He would sing it as this like childish, really annoying sounding melody. I'd never heard it before. And I'm like, God, I don't have time for you to sing this. Like, get out of my face, man. This is terrible. And then all of a sudden I heard the song and it was like head exploded, mind blown. That it was that sound, it was his voice, that guitar tone, that sound, it just caught me and I was like, oh my gosh, now I understand what he was singing.
Yeah. So like when you got into writing and stuff like that, the age of 13 or so, did you start playing soon after that, little gigs and stuff like that by yourself, or did you have another band before Breaching Vista?
Yeah, so we started there happened to be a drummer at my school, and we started chatting about it in grade 7. And then I think it was over the summer of grade 7 going into grade 8, we decided to have a jam. So he told me, oh, my dad's got a drum kit, he lets me play and stuff, he's been teaching me. And I can't remember, I think I brought my guitar amp over to his place and we just threw it up in the basement. We were big Nirvana fans at the time, and so we were punching out Nirvana tunes, Green Day tunes, and it was just such a like again, a mind-blowing experience. It was just like this, I don't know, jubilation or something, if that's makes sense. It was like incredible, the energy, the vibe, the adrenaline rush. So we started jamming, and then my friend Daryl, I was teaching as I was learning guitar. I was teaching my buddy Daryl how to play guitar as well, off to the side. He thought it was pretty cool, and he came from I don't know, more of like a techno kind of music background or so. And I
Yeah.
introduced him to the bands I was listening to, and, Nirvana and Green Day. And when we were in grade 8, or over that, I think actually it was in grade 7 still, Bush had come out, or 16 Stone album got really big anyway. I think it was out for a little while, but 16 Stone got really popular. And we became really big Bush fans as well. And then followed by like Oasis and Goo Goo Dolls, whoever else was, in and around that time. Our Lady Peace was getting huge at that time too.
Yeah.
So we became big fans of those bands. And going into grade 8, we decided to start our own little 3-piece band. We thought, hey, Nirvana's a 3-piece, Green Day's a 3-piece, we can be a 3-piece. And so Daryl's friend had a bass guitar, and he was kind of learning how to play that. And he let Daryl borrow it. And he's like, "Oh, here, man, I'm not really using this. Why don't you try it out?" And so then I just started showing Daryl how to play guitar riffs on bass, basically. And we came into grade 8 as like a rock and roll or alternative rock band, and we named the band Blind. And we ripped off the skateboard company, and we were also into skateboarding at the time. We thought, oh, Blind with their little, they had like a little Grim Reaper character or something. It just looked cool. So we called the band Blind, and we started off just ripping through cover songs in grade 8, and we ended up getting my drummer Tom and I we played a bar, just the two of us, and we played about 3 songs or so. My dad's friends from work had a bar band and stuff, and they invited us out to a gig, and I don't even know to this day how the bar let us in. Like, we were 13 years old. But they let us in, they let us on stage, and the two of us ripped through a few songs, and we sounded absolutely terrible. But it was, again, one of those experiences where the adrenaline rush was just so unreal. It was like, oh my God, I have to do this again. But I was also scared shitless while I was doing it. Like, you're nervous as heck. Oh man, you get up there, you're shaking, and then you do it, and you get off the stage, you're like, I can't wait to do it again. Now I'll tell you, when the next one comes, you're scared shitless again.
Exactly.
But
it's like
we put the band.
hump.
Yeah, we put the band together in grade 8, and by the end of the year, we played our first like full band show. We did the talent show
at school.
At school, and we actually had another guitarist, our buddy Chad, joined us like days before the talent show. He was going to play guitar at the talent show as well, and we said, "Why don't you just join us, man? Play with us on stage. Here's the songs, learn them." And we played Machine Head by Bush. We played Glycerine by Bush, like a full band version. Nice. And we played Leave It Alone by Moist. And it was awesome. We went in and we got them to shut off we were the closing act of this like all afternoon talent show.
Yeah.
And we got them to shut the lights off in the gymnasium right before we started. And then we started playing the Machine Head riff in the dark. And then when that first bass note drops in with the cymbals come in and everything too with the drums, we had someone trigger a strobe light.
Nice.
And then the strobe lights going off and going crazy. And next thing you know, they start bringing the lights up in the room ever so slightly. They kept them dim to keep it that rock environment. But we saw like, I don't know, the first like 1/3 of the audience from grade like kindergarten to grade 3, the teachers just lifting their kids up, like getting them up and walking them out of the gym. They were all bawling their eyes out crying.
Oh Lord.
So that was my very first real concert that I played.
Nice,
oh my God. It was unreal, man. It was one of those feelings that you'll never forget.
Yeah, for sure. So how long did you guys stay together as a band there, Blind?
Blind lasted all of grade 8. Yeah. And then once we got into high school, Chad went off doing other things. Daryl went off doing other things. Daryl was a big soccer player.
Yeah.
So he joined in on the soccer team right away. And Tom and I, we were the rockers at heart. We wanted to be the next Kurt Cobain and Dave Grohl, or Billy Joe and Trey Cool or whatever.
Yeah.
So we started auditioning. We found out there were some bass players in high school. You start meeting new people and stuff, and guys were like, yeah, I play bass. So we started auditioning some guys, and it was really, in grade 9, it was disheartening. Like we couldn't find a guy that could really kind of hold the rhythm.
Yeah.
And I remember I switched. I switched multiple times actually through the years, the guitar lessons I was taking and the instructors for various reasons. But I ended up at this guitar school called Pro Music, and I was sitting in the waiting room, and they had tons of teachers. They had tons of little studio rooms in this school. It's pretty cool. And I'm in the waiting room with my dad, and there's these Spanish fellows, young guys, sitting across from me with their dad. And one guy sitting there holding his bass guitar, right in front, no case on it or anything, just holding it like by the neck of the guitar and sitting down. He's got it kind of between his legs. And my dad goes, "Hey, your son plays bass guitar." And, this guy, Tony, starts nodding. Yeah, he didn't speak a lot of English at the time. And he's like, "Oh, yeah, he plays bass guitar. He's taking lessons." And my dad's like, yeah, my son, he needs a bass player. And I'm looking at my dad going, "Oh my God, hey man, like, I don't even know these guys. What are you doing?" And so we made an arrangement this music school had a jam room in the back, and you could come in on Saturdays and have a band practice with full gear. Like they had drums,
Oh
guitar amps,
wow.
they had lighting, they had sound, like the whole works. And you could actually like rent time to come out and just practice.
Yeah.
So my dad set it up with this Tony guy and his sons, and we brought my drummer Tom. So we found out that the bass player's name was Ricky, and his
Nice.
brother's name was Alex, and his brother Alex played guitar. And we had a cool jam. And then while we were jamming, we started talking about, well, who are your favorite bands? And Ricky and Alex both said, well, Green Day. And I went, you got to be kidding me. That's my favorite band. So immediately we had this like connection. Now, the funny thing is, Ricky wasn't a very good bass player yet. He was just learning. And his brother Alex was a year or two older than him and just a little more advanced. So Alex wanted to switch out and try playing on the bass there. And he jumps in and we jammed a song with Alex on bass. And we thought, oh, this is the guy we're looking for. Alex can play. But we felt really bad because Ricky was the bass player learning how to play. And, at some point in time, I think we tried to ask Alex to play bass for us. And he said, oh, he couldn't do it. He wanted to learn guitar and be a guitar player. And his brother Ricky was the bass player. And we said, all right, you know what? We'll take Ricky because he's a Green Day fan and we like him. He's a good guy. So we started jamming with Ricky, and I think we tried to get Alex to join the band as a guitar player as well. And for whatever reason, he was off doing his own thing.
Yeah.
So we ended up playing a battle of the bands we found out about, and we thought, oh, we're going to go in and we're going to like rock this show and do great and everything. And we got there and it was full of guys that were like way older than us, probably like grade 12s, could have been some college guys in there too. And we were definitely in grade 9, the most amateur band that took the stage that day out of probably about 30 bands. It was funny. Like the funny thing is too, though, they gave us a bunch of tickets to sell for this thing. And it's no different than how promoters are today.
Yeah.
But they give you tickets and they say, okay, like sell as many as you can. And their deal was if whoever sells the most tickets gets to pick what time they want to play at. So we ended up selling the most tickets for this thing. And when we got there, everyone had to load in at like 3:00 in the afternoon or whatever. And then we had the most tickets. So we get to pick the time slot. So I think we picked like 8:00 or something, like dead smack in the middle of the show, the biggest crowd in the room.
Yeah.
And they told us that there was going to be backline equipment, that they're going to have drums, they're going to have guitar amps. So halfway through this show, we're watching these bands play, and we're kind of like mesmerized by the talent that's there. Like, oh my gosh, all these bands are playing their own songs and we only know cover songs. And I realized that the guitar amp that was on stage, like other bands were bringing their own amps. I didn't bring mine. The guitar amp that was on stage was a clean amp. It didn't have any distortion. And I thought, wow, this is going to sound so bad. I don't have a distortion pedal. I don't have any. And I saw this one band using some kind of a grunge pedal or something, or like a metal pedal. I don't know. It was a screaming distortion though. And I went up to the guy afterwards and I was like, hey man, can I borrow your pedal for our set? I forgot to bring one. And he was really generous and let me do it. So
nice. That's awesome.
I forget the band name now. That was so many years ago. It was like 1997 or something. But anyway, I went up, we rocked this show. We played one original song. At that point, we'd written one song together. And the song was called Cheech and Chong, written about those famous guys.
Nice.
And it sounded like identical to a Green Day song. I'm pretty sure I just
did you rip off a Green Day song and just
I think I stole a melody and changed the lyrics. Yeah. So thankfully there's no great recordings of that kicking around anywhere. but we went up and I don't know, I kind of felt like we embarrassed ourselves, but our friends and our family were really supportive and said we did a great job. And it was a gig that we were not very prepared for.
Yeah.
And I think as a result of that, we parted ways with Ricky at that point in time. I shouldn't say we parted ways, but we kind of stopped calling him.
Okay.
And then we went back to, like, Tom and I legitimately went back to looking for a bass player. And the band, like, we couldn't find.
You didn't let your dad pick this one?
We didn't let my dad pick this one. Although I'll tell you this much. My dad wasn't wrong. However, So we went out and we started trying to jam with guys again, and it just wasn't really going anywhere, and we were getting disheartened by it. And it was kind of like, oh man, we're never going to be able to do this and make this work. And I don't know if a year went by, but a decent amount of time had passed anyway. And we got to a point where I think another band in high school wanted to jam with us, like come over to our place and jam with us, you know?
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, we can jam with you, but we don't have a bass player. And I forget, I think we went over, Tom and I, and we just jammed with them. And those guys liked what we were doing. They liked our songs that we were writing. And they're like, oh man, like you guys are pretty good. You know, it's too bad you don't have a bass player. And we thought, well, you know what? We should call Ricky back. Let's just bring him over. Cause like, you know, he can play.
Yeah.
We had a rough experience at this one show. And so we call up Ricky and he's looking to play again. He's like, yeah, I'll come over, guys. So he comes over. And I don't know what this guy did in the time that he was away from us, but he got really freaking good at bass. Like really good, like better than anybody we'd seen at our age at that time.
Nice.
And we were like, what happened? And he was like, I think, and you know, if I ever talk to him again about this, he might correct me, but I think he said something like, Alex told me I sucked, so I practiced every single day.
Nice.
And it was his
That's
older
all you
brother.
can do.
Yeah. Gave him some inspiration by, I guess, you know, criticizing him.
I don't know about constructive criticism, but
it was something. But anyway,
yeah.
Ricky took it to heart, man. And he sat down and he practiced playing through Green Day records. And there was another band that was coming out pretty popular in the punk rock world at the time. They were called Face to Face. And Face to Face had a phenomenal bass player, this guy named Scott Shiflett. And Ricky was like where I got my inspiration from Bruce and from Billy Joe.
Yeah.
Ricky's inspiration was Mike Dirnt and Scott Shiflett. And the two of those guys can walk the bass, man, like the best of them in punk rock. So, yeah, Ricky.
I have my personal favorite, though.
Who's that?
Flea.
Oh, Flea, man. He's a bass player, too. He's got a unique style.
He's a different breed.
A little weird. But, no, the guy, he can write and play some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
Different style, but you know, super talented nonetheless.
Yeah.
So anyway, we called up Ricky and he was back in the band, and then that band ultimately turned into the band Klutz. And by the time we were done high school, we were pretty popular within our friend or our grade, I guess.
Okay.
Everyone around the school kind of knew who Klutz was as a band because we started playing all the school assemblies. And we quickly became like...
I don't remember any of them. Maybe I wasn't there, though.
Well, you know what? I only remember bits and parts of you in high school as well. But I don't know. I think we became a highlight in the assemblies because for the most part, those things were boring. And then we'd come out and we'd rip through some pop punk songs and stuff. And it was just energetic and fun. It was the right sound at that time.
Yeah.
But funny things would always happen to me on stage there. I remember walking out one time and I went a little too far up the stage and all of a sudden my guitar cut out and I turned and looked behind me and the patch cord came right out of the amp. So I had to walk back, plug it in because no one else on the tech crew had any idea what was going on. So I plugged my guitar back in, went back to the microphone and kept singing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. And a year later we were doing another assembly and we're in the middle of playing a song and my guitar strap came off the guitar and I dropped it.
Oh shit.
Yeah. And I don't know, like you might remember this or not, but we used to have 2 assemblies in a day because the school had so many kids. Right?
Yeah. You'd get split up or whatever.
Yeah. It would split it up into 2. So that was in the first assembly. And I thought, okay, I'm going to fix this because that was embarrassing. And in the second assembly, I put on what we call strap locks. So it's just like a little device. You just put it over top of the strap, lock it into place. Strap's not coming off. I don't know why I didn't use those in the first place, but I had them. And so I thought, okay, that's never happening again. And then I think one of my teachers came up to me between the performances, between the assemblies and said, oh man, like, it's a shame the second assembly won't see how you recovered in the first assembly and stuff. You know, 'cause I dropped the guitar, but I just picked it back up and kept playing whatever, you know, and kind of went with it. And And then, I was kind of laughing like, oh yeah, what a shame. Maybe the second assembly won't get to see that. Like, leave me alone, man. And then of course we go into the second assembly and we're rocking out. And the next thing you know, the screw that holds the strap button into my guitar
Fuck.
with the strap lock on it, the whole screw ripped out of the guitar. And I dropped it a second time. The problem was I couldn't pick it up and put it back on this time because the screw came out. So I left the guitar on the ground. I took the mic out of the stand and I walked around and finished the song, and I was throwing the mic. It was a wireless mic. I remember throwing it up and it was doing spins and I was catching it. And then I dropped it and then everyone cheered. And it was just one of those times, you just have to roll with it, make the best of the situation. But yeah, that was fun.
So is that when Klutz end then at the end of high school and Breaching Vista began sort of, or?
No. So yeah, Klutz did come to an end at the end of high school. And what we did in our last year of high school, we decided, let's make a record. We've seen all these, we've seen a few other bands that we like and know in the area put out some CDs. Let's find a good studio, or cheap studio, I should say, in the area, something affordable for high school kids. And let's put a CD out. Let's document what we've been doing for the last 5 years. And we found a sound guy. It was a guy that had actually recorded us live at a show or two. His name was Matty K. And Matt was doing recording out of his basement for $10 an hour.
Wow. That's cheap.
We're like, this is incredible, man. You call a studio and they're like, anywhere from $50 to $100 an hour, right?
Yeah.
At that time. And you're like, holy crap. So Matt was $10 an hour doing it out of his dad's basement. And we started the record there and we finished it. He ended up moving his studio space into this like little cabin in the woods somewhere that his friend's family owned but weren't using. It was about 15, 20 minutes outside of where he lived in Waterloo. And so we ended up starting it in his basement, finishing it in this cabin. But we spent $400 making the CD. So we put 40 hours of work into this thing.
Yeah.
And it was one of the most incredible experiences, everything from start to finish, from recording the drums. And we ran into problems tuning the drums. None of us knew how to tune a drum. We were getting these the one tom drum, the floor tom, was so out of tune that we ended up borrowing a tom drum from another band just so we could record, because we didn't know how to tune the drum. And it was a really cool experience. I remember things that, during the mixing process, we were like floating the board a little bit. Matt was really cool with like floating the mix and stuff. And we get to this one point and there were so many channels and so many things going on. We had to like mute some stuff. It wasn't like today's digital editing. This was analog recording, right? So if we wanted there to be some dead space or like a cymbal not to ring out or whatever in the song, like we didn't want to hear like a buzz from a guitar or something, literally had to hit the mute button on the mixing board while we were mixing, while we were printing the mix, like while we were basically making it the final version. And then you just keep doing it over and over again until you get it right. So it was done in real time. And we had like 2 or 3 of us on the mixing board, and we had like all the cues and everything, like, oh, when this happens, we'll hit this one and then we'll bring this fader down a bit and then we'll bring this one up a little bit because, the drum was hit really hard at this point and then it was softer at this one, we didn't have the luxury of digital editing today. So anyway, it was a great experience. We put out our CD, and Ricky told us at the beginning of the process, he said, okay, guys, just so you know, by the end of the school year, I'm going to leave the band. And I thought, well, by the end of the school year, he's going to change his mind. Especially since, we were recording and stuff. So we got the album finished. My buddy Cooper helped us with the artwork. I knew nothing about artwork, and he happened to have a copy of Photoshop on his computer and knew how to use it. And he knew, he was a bit of a graphic designer at the time, actually. So he knew graphic design concepts. I was like, oh, let's put one of these in here and let's put this picture in here. Let's do this. And he's like, there's no theme. You need to tie this together, man.
Yeah.
So he walked me through that process, and we got that done. And then we manufactured CDs, and all of our friends bought them and everything. It was great. And Tom was actually getting into a lot of rap at the time. I think Eminem was really emerging, and there's a handful of other artists at that time.
God bless him. He just celebrates 12 years sober today too.
I saw a post about that. That's great. Yeah. Isn't that fantastic?
It is.
So anyway, I wasn't a fan of Eminem at the time, but I am now. I think the guy is brilliant at what he does. Um, but Tom was changing like his personality and stuff. It wasn't like necessarily Eminem that was doing it. There was rap involved. There was a different group of friends involved,
Yeah.
and like, for lack of a better term, he was becoming kind of a miserable guy.
Okay.
And it wasn't a positive change. It was a very negative change with him at the time. And all of a sudden, like a month before our CD release party, we spent the whole year working on this album and got everything done. And the CDs are pressed and we're going to release them. And Tom quit the band.
What?
Yeah. We're like, what the heck? I thought Ricky was quitting the band. Tom quit. And then, we're like, all right, good riddance. See you later, pal.
Yeah.
So at this time, we had another guy named Chris playing guitar with us as well. He joined the band about a year prior. And Chris goes, oh, my friend Andy plays drums. And we're like, Andy? Oh, okay, get him over. Like, we have a show to play in a month. He's got to learn 10 songs. And Andy learned them, man. He learned them in about a week. And Andy was a good drummer at the time.
Nice.
Like, way better than Tom. Like, nothing against Tom. It was just Andy came in. It was a different style and just played a little better and stuff. So he was into it.
Fit the mix.
So we do our Wicked CD release party. And it was, an epic show. And we were so proud of it and everything we did. And then I get a call from Ricky the next day. He's like, well, man, good luck with everything. Like I told you at the end of the school year, I was going to quit the band and like, it's done.
So that's how that band ended, eh?
And I'm like, you're kidding me, right? Like we just put the CD out. You're quitting for real? You didn't change your mind? No, man. Like I want to go do punk rock. I want to play with like other guys and stuff. I want to play faster music and whatever else. And he had an opportunity to join another band. So thanked him, said, see you later. And it was like, oh my gosh, like we just lost the best bass player in the entire city.
Yeah, yeah.
Like unreal. So yeah, that was the end of Klutz, essentially though, because we couldn't replace Ricky. We had songs on that album that he played wicked bass lines to that no one else could play.
Yeah.
So we didn't know what we were doing, but Chris and I were hanging out that summer a lot. And then Daryl and I started hanging out again. So coincidentally around this time, Avril Lavigne came out and started blowing up. Like, if you remember that time at all.
Oh, I remember her.
She like rocketed to stardom very quickly.
Very, very quick. Yeah.
Right after the release. Yeah. Right after the release of Complicated. And Daryl called me. He's like, dude, I love this girl. And I was like, okay, who is she? He introduced me to her music and stuff. And I was like, oh, wow, like she's really good. This is a great song. He's like, yeah, you need to teach me how to play it on guitar. And I'm like, all right, yeah, no problem. So learn the song, teach Daryl how to play Complicated. No big deal. Then it was Skater Boy and probably another one off of that album. And as we're hanging out, and him and I kind of drifted apart musically through high school. We still like talked and stuff. We'd play sports together and that. But, I was doing music. He was doing soccer. So we kind of came back around together and we started, I started introducing him to a bunch of like the emo bands and stuff that I was listening to at that time. And he was getting into those bands, Taking Back Sunday being one of them, Monine being another. And then that led to like Dashboard Confessional and a bunch of other artists. And Daryl got really into that style of music. So we started hanging out regularly that summer and just, trading off like records and stuff and jamming a little bit. And we were at this house party next door to Chris's place. These girls would always throw these parties when their parents were gone and just be full of kids. Like they were pretty fun times.
Yeah.
And we're hanging out and they have like this, it was like a theater room, like fiber optic lighting in the ceiling and everything.
Nice.
Really cool, like atmosphere. And we're hanging out, and we must've been 19 years old at the time. So we're just like drinking age. And we're playing some acoustic guitars down there, jamming, having a party. And Chris looks at me and goes, dude, Daryl's the guy. And I was like, what do you mean Daryl's the guy? He's like, Daryl's our bass player, man. Get him to play bass.
Was Daryl on bass though?
No, he wasn't playing bass at the time. So I was like, well, I'll talk to him. Like Daryl used to play bass. I don't know if he still, like if he wants to, I'll talk to him. Okay. So yeah, Daryl and I had a conversation like, I don't know, that night or the next day. And I said, yeah, dude, what do you think of joining the band? And he's like, well, I don't know. I haven't played in a few years kind of thing. I don't have any gear. And he's like, I can't play like Rick or like Ricky, and I'm like, well, who cares? We'll write different songs, whatever, like you want to try it out? He's like, yeah, I'll try it out. What the heck? Okay. And then the next day, we literally went to Sherwood, music store locally here, and
Yeah.
he bought a bass guitar.
Nice.
And so yeah, we came home, we started jamming and stuff. And I had like an old guitar amp, but I just plug his bass into, and probably could have blown the thing up, but it was cool for just like him and I, like, I was showing him some parts, and he was writing some bass lines and stuff to some songs that we were working on.
Yeah.
And then we tried to jam, and it just didn't cut it. This little guitar amp just wouldn't hold up in practice. Like, we couldn't hear the bass. So I had like $500 or $600 saved up in a jar, and Daryl had no money. And we're like, well, we can't practice like this. So I went out and I bought him a bass amp.
Nice. That was very nice.
We went to a used music store, and we just bought him the biggest bass amp we could possibly find.
Something that'll just let it go, eh?
Oh yeah, and it did, man. It was better than most bass players had in the area. And the thing worked for a little while, and then it crapped out, and we took it back to the guy, and the guy fixed it, and we played it again for a bit, and it crapped out again, and we took it back to the guy. And I think it happened like 2 or 3 times, and finally we're like, listen, man, like, you sold us a piece of junk. Like, give us our money back. This is bullshit.
Nice.
And so finally the guy agreed, like, okay, you know what? This isn't a good amp, and I feel sorry for you kids. And he gave us the money back, and we ended up going to Sherwood. And at this point in time, Daryl had, made some extra money, whatever. So we had more money to put into it, and he bought an even better amp at Sherwood. And that one actually has stood the test of time. That was 2002. And that bass amp is sitting in my basement right now.
Still going strong.
Still working. And because he let me borrow it now.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh, so and I was going to say that band ended up being called Close to Home.
Okay.
So
okay.
that was what bridged the gap between Klutz and Breaching Vista.
Nice.
Close to Home was around from 2002 to 2005. We put out an EP. We did some touring around Ontario, Quebec. Had a lot of good times. We bought a minibus, put a bunk in it, decked it.
That was the minibus times, eh?
That was the minibus times. It was wicked.
But didn't the minibus go on to Breaching Vista as well?
It did carry into Breaching Vista, and it fell apart very quickly after that. Literally, the frame, we were gone to Montreal on a trip, our first time to Montreal with Breaching Vista. And on our way home, we hit a pothole somewhere in the highway in Quebec, and a piece of the frame actually snapped off. Well, about an hour or two later into Ontario, the piece of the frame broke off, and we chalked it up to that pothole being part of the problem. And the frame just snapped off, and it stabbed into one of the dually wheels in the back and blew the tire to shreds. And we were all over the 401. Thankfully, it was at night. There's nobody on the road, and we ended up we got stranded outside Cobourg. Well, we we got towed into Cobourg, and they dropped us off the tow truck in a parking lot. And the guy was like half in the bag too. He told us he came from a party. He was on call, but he was at a party, and we could smell the booze on him. So he got us off the highway, dropped us in a parking lot, and then he told us he didn't have any tools and couldn't change our tire. So we had a spare tire, but we had no way to jack the bus up. And so he left us, and he said, oh, yeah, I told another driver to come out and meet you here. And I thought, okay, that's cool. And we waited and waited, and no driver showed up. And there happened to be a 24-hour grocery store. So we went in, we bought some food to eat. And that was back in the day when, you still go to a payphone and there's a phone book and everything.
Yeah.
We ripped the page out of the phone book with all the tow truck numbers.
And started calling, eh?
We called every single one of them. Every single one. And there were literally 2 operators that answered every call.
It was the same ones, eh?
The same 2, yeah. And every one of them told us they didn't have anybody in the area. And then, there weren't any tools. There was all like this runaround thing. We're like, what the hell do we do? We need to go home. We called a mobile truck repair guy that was an hour outside of town. And this is in the middle of the night. We call him. He was a 24-hour service. And he said, oh, well, let me know in the morning if you don't have anybody else. He's like, I'm not coming out there, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But someone in town, he told us some place that was going to open up at like 7 a.m. Call them. I'm like, all right. So we tried everything. We called them. They didn't want to help us or couldn't. There's a Canadian Tire across the street. We walked over there. We asked them if they could do it. They looked out the window, saw the bus, said no. We asked if we could buy a jack that would jack a bus up. They said no. So we finally call this guy back that's an hour away. We're like, listen, man, we are desperate. Can you please come out here? And he was like, oh, crap. If I knew you guys were actually going to wait all night, he's like, I would have come out last night. But
An asshole.
oh, yeah. So he did. He drove out. He fixed it in 5 minutes, man. when you've got power tools, like compressors and everything. And yeah, the bus was up, wheel was off, new one was on. We were ready to go.
Nice.
I think we gave him $150 or something for troubles.
So being a musician must take a toll on you mentally, John. What kinds of things did you do to stay in check and stuff?
You know what? There are a lot of highs and lows in music. I hear more about it from touring artists that do more significant touring than I've done.
Yeah.
But I know from the experiences that I've had, when you're on the road for a few days or a week or a few weeks, you're living on this high. And I guess the higher you go up in your career, the bigger your band gets, the more perks you probably find while you're on the tour. Like, you might get a dressing room and it might be full of food because you have a hospitality rider.
Yeah.
Might be full of booze. If you're a small band, then you're scraping by and you might get a beer or two, and that's awesome too.
Yeah.
And you're just getting barely paid for playing and some gas money. And you're taking turns sleeping while someone drives at night to get you to the next town and stuff. But you live on this adrenaline rush when you're out and about, and you get to do this thing that you love doing every single day, and you get to play new venues and new cities and hopefully for new audiences. And as your band grows, or as you play with bands that have a following in their town and stuff, it's a wild and fun experience. When you get home, you have to readjust to your regular everyday life, go back to your job, whatever it may be, and whether it's in retail or you're working in industrial or whatever you do, you can be a teacher, anything. You're not living that like dream life anymore, I guess. So I know of a handful of people that, and it happens to crew members as well. I should say it's not just musicians, but people get used to living this lifestyle on the road, and they get home and then they have to readjust to the home life, and it's just not the same. And then they're at home and they get bored and they need to be out and doing some action and stuff. So it affects people in different ways. I've been pretty fortunate that I haven't felt serious side effects from that kind of a change, I guess. And it could be partly because I haven't toured as long as some people I know.
Yeah.
But I think I've done a lot of mindset training over the years, everything from when I was younger, buying my first set of Tony Robbins CDs. And
Well, you started young with him, eh?
Yeah, I bought Tony Robbins CDs easily over 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
I couldn't tell you exactly which year, but
Yeah.
I was a lot younger version of myself, early 20s at least. So, it was one of those things, you're watching an infomercial and it's like everyone's talking about how this Tony Robbins guy changed their life. And I thought, well, I want to change my life. So I bought the CDs, I got them, I listened to them, and nothing changed.
Yeah.
One of those things. But what happened was, at the time when I was getting early into that stuff, I couldn't understand. I didn't have the awareness level. I didn't have the understanding, and I didn't have anybody to coach me through and to explain the concepts and fundamentals that Tony was teaching. But through some repetition, like I'd listen to those CDs over and over again, and then I'd put them away for a year or two. I'd forget about them, and I'd bring them back out and be, oh yeah. And then I put them, eventually I, ripped them and put them on my iPod, and I would go out jogging and listening to Tony. And I started following all sorts of motivational speakers and strategists online, and just kind of taking bits and pieces from all of them that resonated with me. And, and they give you exercises to do. But I went through, I guess at some point in time, I got into a relationship, and it lasted 6 years, and I was engaged, and, thought that that's the direction my life was heading, until I realized that, I wasn't happy. I wasn't feeling fulfilled in that situation. And I'm not going to turn this into like a relationship type interview here, podcast, but ultimately what happened is I ended up getting into some therapy, and my therapist really helped me uncover um, a lot of different things that had gone on through my life, and how to how to deal with them, I guess, and put them to rest. And she gave me some exercises with journaling, which worked really well at the time that I was in therapy. And then, of course, you kind of fall off the wagon and stop doing it. But it was one of those things that it helped me get to the next part, like the
Yeah.
next point in my life, and it really helped condition my mind and open up and understand some of the things that I'd heard and learned over the years, but didn't fully understand. It was all starting to kind of come around and make sense through this. So once I got out of therapy, I started looking at things and being like, well, what's the next step for me? And what am I going to do with my life? Um, and of course, I was playing in the band, I was doing music, I was writing songs, but there was a level of fulfillment that just wasn't there. And what ended up happening, I ended up connecting with a personal development coach. And right off the bat, he called me out. We had a meeting, went out for a drink, and he was like, well, what are your goals? And I rambled on for about 10 minutes or so about these different things I was trying to do with my life and wanted to achieve. And he's like, dude, you need to make a fucking decision. And pardon my French, sorry. But
It's okay. We're allowed to swear.
it blew me away. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to hire this guy. He knows exactly what I need to do. And he called me out on it. And so his name is Doug Dane, and great guy. He's a good friend of mine, and a mentor of mine. And I ended up hiring him and working with him. And he got me into another type of mindset training. It was a program called Thinking Into Results that I did, and Doug helped coach me through it. But again, there's a lot of journaling exercises and goal setting and affirmations and just staying focused on the things that are important to you and your priorities. And so that's kind of where I chalk up my I guess my capacity for just staying positive and staying it's staying focused on my goals, really ultimately what it is. And
Yeah.
I haven't felt those highs and lows because I've always been a goal oriented person. I just didn't really understand how to stay focused on them or how to prioritize them. But I was always setting goals. In fact, one of Tony's CDs is a goal setting workshop. And so I was doing goal setting workshops years ago, and I'd set my goals. I'd be like, this is what I'm going to do. And then a week later, you forget where your goals were because you didn't really set them properly. You didn't really understand how to take action. You didn't really understand how to stay focused on them even when you didn't feel like it. It's like
Yeah.
there's this like auto suggestion you have to do where you just repetitiveness. You have to be rewriting this goal out of yours every single day. Remind yourself, read it to yourself, look at it, keep a card in your pocket with the goal written on it. It's a goal card.
For sure.
And that's a reminder of like what is important to you, what are your priorities, what are you trying to achieve. You don't have to know how you're going to do it, you don't have to know when it's going to happen, but as long as you're constantly reinforcing that goal, like this is what I'm set out to do. And it's got to be something that like makes you shake. It's got to be one of those things that scares you a little bit, that it's like, oh man, if you set a goal that you know how to do or you think you know how to do, it's not a strong enough goal. You got to set a goal. You got to set a goal that you don't know how the heck you're going to do it, but you have to set it and you got to believe that you can do it. And then you just keep reaffirming it every single day and keep focused on it. And by doing that, I found that was the missing piece for me that really
Is that what
keeps
pushed you over to
my,
the next level sort of thing to put you into
it did.
this
It took
solo
me to
career?
it took me to the next level. And just like where I left off with therapy helped me through a lot of different things. And I was working with my therapist for 4 years.
Oh, wow.
But and she was great. It went from, starting out as like a relationship type therapy session to,
Yeah.
turning into almost like some sort of a life coaching type thing. But therapy and personal development coaching are two different kind of strategies, I guess I would say.
Yeah.
They don't work quite the same. I think they're very equally important. But what it comes down to is what you need at the time, right? So I came to kind of a natural conclusion with where therapy was taking me, and I needed that next level step, and that's where the development coaching came in and shifting my mindset. But ultimately, that's how I stay level-headed, and how I can stay fairly calm and collected in most cases. Everyone reacts to things differently,
Yeah.
but in most cases, I feel like I'm pretty good and calm, and just I keep my cool. But some of the exercises that I do, I get myself into a mindset of gratitude every day. So most times I'll start my day this way. Some days, I'll get it done by the end of the day. But either way, I've got a journal that I write out 10 things I'm grateful for every day. And I use my opposite hand to do it, because it causes me to really have to focus on what I'm trying to write. So you gotta get really deep into that mindset, and it taps into, the other half of your brain, I guess your creative side. Um, but it's a really unique thing, and my writing doesn't look any better when I do it every single day. It still looks like I'm writing with my left hand, but the feeling, like really, once you're done the exercise, you've gotten through 10 things that you're
It
grateful
really
for.
makes you think.
It really makes you think.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you feel like you're starting. If I do it first thing in the morning, then I'm starting my day off in a really, really good state. Starting it
Nice.
off where I'm, gratefulness is the first thing that I'm opening my eyes up to. You look outside and be like, man, I'm grateful that the sun's shining today. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful day out. I'm grateful that I feel healthy, that I am healthy. Grateful that I feel well rested. I'm grateful that my family's healthy. Like anything. I'm grateful that I had a good cup of coffee today.
Nice.
So simple things like that. But it sets you up in the right mindset. It sets you up in the right energy. And then I have another journal that I'll sit there and I'll write up my goal, and then I'll write some affirmations. Um, the affirmations are used to they're used to help change habits in a lot of cases. So if you want to start a new habit, or you want to get rid of an old one, the best way to get rid of an old habit, the only way really, is to replace it with a new habit.
Yeah.
So for instance, I'll write down in my one of my affirmations is that I love my healthy body and I eat clean and exercise daily. And I write this out every day. Am I eating clean and exercising every day? Not always. But if I'm
It's written down
reaffirming,
there.
it is written down. And the thing is, what I've learned over time is that what you're doing is you're setting yourself a command, and then you're trying to follow it.
Yeah.
And it takes time to really sink it in, and it takes continuous repetition. And it's like anything with like the goal setting and that. So as long as I keep writing this thing out, as long as I keep reading, as long as I keep believing it, eventually I'm going to transform myself and I'm going to start doing it. And once you start doing it, once it becomes part of your second nature, it develops into your new habit, then you can change it. Like you don't change the habit, but you change what you're writing. Because now all of a
You
sudden
can do a new one now.
you can do a new one. Exactly. But you can't do too many of them at once. I've heard that, doing 2 of them at a time is probably the most you should do.
Yeah.
But when I say affirmations, that's an example of an affirmation. Is just rewriting the same thing over and over again, just reaffirming. And it's this habit that I'm trying to change for myself. And then
Okay.
once it becomes a new habit, then I can focus on changing another old habit, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I'm
So
still writing it because I haven't been exercising every day yet.
fair enough. You recently just switched to solo career and gave up a career that you had with work for quite a few years. How is that a switch? How did the transition go?
The transition was a difficult one. For 14 years, I was in a logistics coordinator type role with a manufacturing company. And, it was I want to say a 9 to 5, but it was more like 7 to 3:30. But it was a full-time job. It paid decent. It had decent, okay benefits. It was a comfortable position to be in, but it wasn't fulfilling,
Yeah.
and year after year, you're going through things and you think, okay, well, I won't even finish. Like this year, I'll be doing something else. I'll be doing the thing that I want to be doing. I'll be doing something more interesting. I'll be doing something in my field. I'll get, by the end of this year, that'll change. And then it doesn't. And you keep doing the same thing over and over again. And then you get locked up, with bills. And, you can buy a house, you can have a mortgage, you can have a rent, insurance payments, all sorts of things. And all of a sudden now, you rely on this paycheck to come in all the time, and you kind of get stuck. And that's where I was at when I first met Doug. Doug often refers to himself as the stuck buster. It's I don't know who coined that, if he did himself or what, but it's kind of funny. But people come to Doug when they feel stuck, and Doug helps them find a way to get unstuck. Banged into the mic there. Sorry. So I was stuck at this job. I was, kind of just living the day-to-day thing, and I had to shift my mindset. I had to come to the point in time where I believed that I didn't need the job, that if I started doing the things that were more fulfilling to me and I started putting my energy into that I don't know how I'm going to transition, how I'm going to get by. I don't know how this is all going to work.
Yeah.
But I'm going to find a way. And as long as I put my energy into it, I'm going to find a way to do this. And I finally got to a point. I started thinking about it last summer, and then led into the fall. And my fiance is very supportive, and she actually works at the company that I left. That's where we met, and we worked together for several years. But she's very supportive and wanted me to pursue my dreams and my aspirations and, my career path. But she said, because of certain situations and stuff at work, like not to do it in the fall, stick around, help her as things kind of transition. So we thought, okay, we'll revisit in the new year.
Nice.
January came, and then all of a sudden in January, started looking at things, and I started thinking, well, if I don't do this now, then I may never do it.
Yeah, for sure.
At some point in time, you just have to make the decision.
Nice.
And she agreed with me. And so we just decided that, okay, I'll write up a resignation letter, and I'm going to give them 4 weeks notice.
Perfect.
And that'll give them time to find someone that I can train and replace, my position. And then that's it. I go on with focusing on my music career.
Nice.
And that's what we did. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, I actually ended the job early February.
Yeah.
And just dug my heels in, and I've been working on music, really.
That's amazing.
Well, thank you. Yeah, just ever since, it's just been that's my sole focus now every day.
That's awesome. Well, I got almost the end here, but I got the 5 questions of fire. Just 5 random questions, buddy.
5 questions.
Yeah, so we'll start with the first one here. What's your go-to order at your favorite hometown restaurant?
Go-to order?
Yeah.
Pulled pork nachos at Ethel's in Waterloo.
Nice. What do you wish you would have known when you first started this solo career out?
I wish I would have known how to record myself.
Fair enough. What are you curious about right now in this instant?
In this instant, I'm curious to see how well I'm going to do at recording myself, because I'm going to be tracking some guitars later today.
Nice. And to end it there, what are 3 things you could tell the youth or the younger crowd there, to keep bettering themselves? What are 3 main things that you do?
Well, first and foremost, I think your health is extremely important, and that's physical, mental, emotional, all of those things. But if you're able to stay physically fit, then making good choices that way, in terms of eating clean and exercising and that. And it's a work in progress for me as well. But it's not something that comes natural. It comes easy to everybody. But I feel like that's one of the most important things, because if you can't get up, and if your body doesn't, move for you the way you want it to, God willing that you're able to, kind of thing. And one of those, I think that's one of the most important things, is just being healthy. And then when it comes to mental health and your mindset, and emotional health as well as spiritual, just find some good I don't want to say instruction or instructors, but I guess find some mentors out there. Find videos that you resonate with on YouTube, or look for a coach of some sort, and have them, if you work with somebody, get them to help you define your goals, your priorities. Because when you stay focused on the things that are important to you, I find that's when you're the most productive. And when you're productive, that's when you're the most fulfilled. And when you're fulfilled, then that's when you're the most happy, you know. And that's, or I shouldn't just say happy, because people can be happy very easily, but that's when you're filled with the most joy. And when you feel that like real essence of joy in your life, and you get up every day and you're doing things that are fulfilling, and you feel like this is my purpose in life, there's no better feeling than that, man. Like it gets you up every day and on, you know, the right track, and you're doing something that you feel like you're contributing in some way. And it's just the way to live.
For sure. Nice, man. Thank you.
You're welcome, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem, man. I'd like to give a quick shout out to my sponsor, Ellis Original. You can find them both at Ellis Original on Facebook and Instagram. They provide great custom clothing, so head over and give them a shout out. And you can find John Maksym on Instagram and Facebook at John Maksym Music. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Chris.